I think as we go forward, there are some basic things we need to take a look at. First of all, race may not be the fundamental issue, the racism. It could be a symptom of a deeper problem. Because when we think about it, this racism imports that there's a difference between people who are different racial extractions. But at the same time, we have people who are mixed, they call us. So what happened in the mix of things? Who was doing the mixing? Are you trying to say they were mixed up? I'm just simply raising some questions here. Why is it that they put black people in the back of the bus, and the law said that white people had to sit in the, why would they do that to white people? They made them sit in the front of the bus. In other words, white people couldn't sit in the back of the bus. That was discriminating against white folks. Now that I know we're not post-racial thing, so I'm going to go ahead and say the rest. Those little white boys could not ever sit on that long back seat. Black only. And I remember when I was 4 years old, I used to stretch out. One leg on the seat and one on grandmama's lap. That was a bed for colored people. The little white boys never experienced it. And I remember that time when the bus had a wreck, and had all those white people in the front went through the windshield in the front. Why would they do that to white folks? They come up with some kind of law like that, and you had to step over all these bloody white bodies to get off the bus.
Oh, man.
Now, you have to, don't you think you ought to examine the mind of someone who would come up with something like that? But of course, the reason they did it is because they said that white people were superior, and they were smarter. And they were smarter. That's when I began to question, age 7. Okay? I began to question this thing at age 7. And what I found out is, and I was able to articulate it later, that this segregation had to do with more horizontal than vertical. We could stand up on Florida Avenue and see the parade. There was no separate sections when you stood up. It was sitting down is when they wanted you to separate. So why did they want us to separate when we're sitting down? Because to sit down together implies social equality. Okay? You never see nobody sit down and drink some water at the fountain. Everybody stood up. You had a separate water fountain, but colored water, you know? So the point I'm making is that this had much more to do with economics than it had to do with race. And they only used race to identify who was going to be selected to be exploited. and the poor white folks were equally exploited. Now the trick was played on white folk. We were always aware of what they were doing and why they were doing it to us. Yes, we had the St. Petersburg time. Yeah, I'm from Tampa, Florida. We grew up together. He was on, yeah, we used to read that. In fact, we used to always take the Sunday paper, you know, the Tampa Daily Time, because it was a thicker paper and we used paper to wrap fish. Wasn't nothing about us. So the segregation was all a farce. We got to understand that. Because it was not simply based on race. There was a way of trying to decide who they were going to exploit. Good example, Nigeria. About 1/4 of our oil comes from Nigeria. Nigeria is the most populated African country. Oil comes from Nigeria. They bring it here, we refine it, and send it back to Nigeria. No refineries. We call them third world. Remember we used to call them third worlds? Why has it always got to be third? My point is, it has much more to do with economics and who we're going to exploit than the whole business of race. Because when they exploit poor white folks along with poor black folks and Hispanics and the Native Americans, okay, it was used for economic reasons. And that's the thing we got to be very clear about. And the experience we had in the South, we had to understand. Now, in terms of the movement, and then we're going to move on. The Montgomery bus boycott dealt with local buses. Okay? Local buses. And instead of trying to integrate local buses and sit in the front, we decided to withdraw our participation. You see, on the Freedom Rides, we did the opposite. We didn't boycott the Greyhound bus. We went and we sat on the front. He was on it, I was on it, John Lewis, all the rest of us. We went to the front. And guess what? The whites sat in the back. That's how they knew the whites who were involved in the movement. So they sat next to black folks or either in the back to identify. In fact, we were going to ride anyway. So what happened is when they decided they were going to desegregate those buses. All right? Now, before we go any further, did you know it's still against the law for you to ride integratedly from one city to another within the same state in the South? No, it was interstate travel is the thing that's integrated. Interstate. It never affected intrastate. And by the way, I'm through, the laws are still on the books. Segregated laws have not been repealed. They can be used at will. And whosoever will be elected, who wants to not enforce the law, will leave it segregated. Talking about progress and change, I'm just raising the question.